in continuation with our last discussion, that we are trying to understand how to write a manuscript. Manuscript is one thing that we actually develop to present our research results and we submit it to a journal. So, there are different aspects, there are different sections that we cover in a manuscript, including the title, abstract, the introduction section, the methodology, the materials and methods, the results section, the discussion, acknowledgement, funding, references. All these parts combine together when we create a manuscript. So, there are multiple things that we need to take care while developing a manuscript. So, we have discussed before what to write in a title, what to write in an abstract when we write an abstract for a conference presentation. Then we discussed about the introduction section of the manuscript, how to take care, what are the subsections that we include in the introduction, what are the topics that needs to be covered in the introduction section. Then we discussed the materials and methods that we include into the manuscript. So, materials and methods are one thing that are written in such a way that a person can replicate, a third person can replicate your research. So, this is how we write a method section. Then we write the results section, whatever we have written in method section that produce some kind of research results. So, we cover all those sections into the results part, where we do not interpret anything, we just write what we have observed through our research. So, that is very important to understand. The underlining point is that we do not interpret any results, we just write the observations that we have got from the research that we have done so far. So, now you would ask that where we would discuss or interpret the results. So, here is a section, the discussion section, where we actually discuss the results, interpret our results, we compare the results from the previously done research. So, that is very important, the interpretation and comparison. There are two aspects of discussion section where we would write. One is the interpretation of our own results and the second is the comparison from the previously conducted research. The next part that we also cover in the discussion section is the study limitations, if we have any. So, none of the research is 100% complete, or there are no future directions, or there are no limitations. So, it's always remember that there are always a limitation in a research. So, we have to be very explicit and we have to be very compassionate about writing our limitations. For example, you covered 10,000 respondents for your research, but you have to understand there may be thousands, lakhs of people who might be the respondents for your research, but you can't cover those lakhs of population from different countries or different areas. So, you have chosen some sampling method and represented them as a general population. So, that is a limitation, kind of limitation. Further, there are multiple people who may be from different areas, but you have chosen one particular area as per your convenience to complete your research. So, that is again might be limitation for your research. Further, there might be some other methodology that is available to complete your research similar to what you have chosen. So, the another methodology might result in some different kind of observations. So, that is again kind of limitation, that you can't cover all the research methodologies. There is one kind of methodology that you can cover and produce your results. So, these are kind of limitations. Sometimes when it is a time series study, some people might leave the study in between and you can't follow up with them. So, that is again a limitation, because you started with 10,000 population, but when you completed your research you only were able to receive the responses from 5,000 people. So, that is a limitations, because there might be some people who stop to follow up. So, these are some of the limitations that might occur when you conducted your research. So, you should be very open to your audience who are reading your research, that these kind of limitations are there. Further, if there is a questionnaire based study, then you have to understand, if you write 6,000 emails, you generally receive the response from 60 people. So, that is again a limitation of questionnaire based study. When you just email them, keep on sending them questionnaires, but only few of them actually respond. So that is again a limitation for your study. So you have to be very compassionate and understandable about such kind of limitations, and you should be open to discuss, to tell to your audience who are reading your research paper that these kind of things are generally observed. So we'll deep dive more into the discussion section of a clinical paper of a manuscript. So explaining the meaning of the result to the reader is the purpose of discussion. That's what I told you, that till now we have worked on different sections of the manuscript, but we have not interpreted anything about the results that you have observed. So this is the first occurrence of interpretation of the results that gives your reader an information that what these results mean. In results section, you have put down the numbers. You have put the clinical response was observed in 10 patients, adverse effects were observed in 100 patients or something like that. But what does this 10 or 100 means? A layman, when reading a patient, when reading your research paper, he has to understand what this 10 or 100 means. So discussion is the section that gives you an opportunity to tell to your readers what these numbers actually mean. So this is what discussion is all about. So things to be avoided when writing the discussion is over interpretation of your results. So your results should not be over interpreted. By that means, if you are saying that clinical response was observed in 10 patients, then you should write that this is the observation that I received, but not write, oh, I received very good results, or the results were overwhelming. So these kind of words or over interpretation of the results should not be there. Unwarranted speculations. You conducted a clinical research in about 100 patients and you write that these results are applicable to 10 lakh of patients who are suffering from this kind of disease. So this is an unwarranted speculation. You can't write that. You can just say that these results can be used or these results can be implemented in larger population, but that should be firstly tested in larger population rather than just implementing the results to a larger population, but a larger study is required because you tested the methodology or the results on a very small population. So that you should be very cautious about implementing the same results in a larger population. So a larger study should be directed. So no unwarranted speculation should be made in discussion section. Then inflating the importance of findings. So this is what I am telling you, you don't inflate the importance of your finding. Yes, your finding, because you conducted a good research, you have some findings, but don't inflate the importance of such finding. You can just write, use this results with caution because of these kind of limitations. That's what I initially told, that there are always some kind of limitations in a study. So you should be cautious while writing or while interpreting your results or findings of the research. Then statements that are not supported by the data are very important. You can't write anything for which the results have not been written. For example, in a clinical paper, when you wrote that clinical response was this, overall survival was this, and adverse events were dash dash dash, and then when you are writing the discussion section, you are stating that progression free survival was this. If you have not written the results section for progression free survival, you can't add any interpretation about that outcome in your discussion section. So you should be cautious while writing your discussion section and do not introduce any new thing in your discussion section for which the results have not written. For example, if you have used any linguistic tool and assessed, you have assessed the patients based on a tool which has 10 questions, then 11th question results cannot be incorporated into your discussion section. You should have some responsibility of writing only those results or interpreting only those results that you have written in your results section. and on the other hand, in results section, you can only write those results which you have mentioned in your methodology section. So, all these sections, as you know, are interrelated. So, you will have to write only those outcomes that you have assessed in your methodology, and you can write only those results for which you have mentioned in your methodology, which in turn would result or would finally be included into your discussion section. So, what you have written in your method section, you will write those in results section, and only those results would be discussed in your discussion section. So, all these things are interrelated, and you should be cautious while writing all these sections. So, what are the key points that you have to follow while writing the discussion section is provide short reminder of objectives. So, this is the sequence how we actually go about the discussion section, where the first and the foremost point is that you write about the objective section. You will just give a brief of your objectives. You will not provide any much details, but just a brief introduction of your objectives, study objectives in one or two statements at the maximum. Then state the main findings, but do not repeat the results. You have to summarize your results, but not repeat the complete results, just a summary or the main findings specially. So, the main question should be answered there. So, your main objective, see the sequence goes, you have to write the main objective and give the result of that particular objective in a summary format. So, it means that you have answered your objective, right. Then we can go to the next section in the discussion part is to compare the results with the findings of other authors. That is, you have to compare with the findings of the previous results that has been done similar to what you have done. It wouldn't be the same because you won't be repeating the same study. So, it would be the similar older study or the other authors that have done, and you have to compare those results with your findings. So, it would be explaining any differences in the findings. Obviously, you have done the similar study to find something new. So, there might be some differences or congruence with the previous findings. So, you have to explain any differences in the findings, why they were different and why your study is of more importance, or why did you do another study, a similar study. So, you have to tell the differences in findings, right. For example, you conducted a study in geriatric patients, rest of the methodology was same to a previously conducted study where the patients were included of all the ages, but you compared you did the study with only geriatric patients. So, this is a difference in finding. Why your results are different from the previous is that the patient population is different from what was included in the previous study. So, this is an example of the difference in the findings, because your methodology was little bit different from the previously conducted study. So, this is just an example of that. Then describe the strength and weaknesses of the study and future need. See, initially I told you that none of the study is 100% complete, none of the research leads to an end of that particular research. It cannot be possible. So, every research has some comma rather than a full stop to it. So, when a comma appears, it means that there are some other unmet needs or there are future needs that needs to be taken care after this study. So, there must be some strengths and weaknesses. From the weakness of the study, you can go ahead with filling up that gap and do a future study. Strengths were taken from the previously conducted study. A previously half completed study was taken further by you by making those gaps into your strengths, and now you have identified few more weaknesses which can again become a gap for the next future needed study. So, this is how research goes on. Research can never end, right. So, discuss the meaning of study and its implementation or implications for physicians, policymaker, patients, other investigators, other researchers. So whenever we complete a study, whenever we stop writing about a study, then in the last we always write that these are the steps that can be done in future, and these are the implications for the stakeholders that were involved into that particular study or that are affected by this kind of study. That might include some kind of physicians or policymakers or the patients or the other investigators or the researchers or nurses or caretakers. So there may be multiple stakeholders which might be affected by the research that you have done. So these implications should be explicitly written into your discussion section of the manuscript. So we have covered multiple things into this discussion section which become very important and become the only interested section by some of the stakeholders. Some of the stakeholders wouldn't read the complete results, they wouldn't read the complete methodology because they are only interested in understanding the implications of your research. So the discussion section should be written in such a way that it forms a story and it tells everything about your research except for the methodology. We don't write much about the methodology section, about the methodology of your research, because that doesn't need to be incorporated here. You just need to tell your stakeholders or your audience about what your objectives was, what your results in summary were, then was your results able to answer your research objective, then what were the earlier conducted studies and why your study makes a difference, then what are the strengths and weaknesses of your study. Then you have to tell about what is the future need, what further research can be done in a similar field where the gap was. You are actually telling your audience, your researchers, that there is still a need to go ahead. So a gap identification aspect is taken care here. And what are the implications to different stakeholders? The stakeholders may be, a list may be there where a physician is interested in reading your study, a policymaker may be maybe of importance, then a patient, a caretaker, and there may be lot of people who are interested, including the researcher who will take this study further. As a PhD student, every student would read the previously conducted study so that he can identify the gap. So he or she will be most interested in the discussion section rather than in the complete manuscript. So this is a very important section where you actually use your mind to do all these steps. So reiterate your key conclusion. That is very important, that you make focus on the key conclusion that you have actually found from your discussion section. So the conclusion section is a very short summary of what you have written in discussion section, except for the previous comparisons. It will tell you in one line what the objectives are and what are the key findings in just single line, and what are the strengths and weaknesses of your study, and what is the future need and implications for your study. In 3 to 4 lines, you just compile all this part into your conclusion section. So what are the gaps actually? What we have seen, there are multiple gaps which are left or which are ignored by the authors while writing the discussion section. So we will discuss it one by one. So the one thing I told you just now, that this is a section which many of the stakeholders would read. So this is the only section that many of these stakeholders would read. So you should be cautious while writing this part, and it should not be too long or unfocused that the person or the reader or your audience or any of the stakeholder actually misses the flow or the interest in reading that part. So he or she will not read the complete paper if the discussion is not written or very in a crisp way, in a focused manner. So in the last slide, if you can see that we have written that what needs to be included in discussion section. These are all the parts that needs to be written, but that needs to be written in a very focused manner, that it not go beyond a control of the author and it loses the interest of the reader, of your audience, of your research. So it should not be too long and unfocused. Further, there are 2 points that needs to be understood here, that one is that you can't lose the interest of the reader. The second point is there is always a limitation of word count. When you submit any article to a journal, whether it is a scientific or a non-scientific, humanities journal, social scientist journal, any of the journal has a word count limit. So you have to adjust your word counts in your different sections. So there are not, you don't have so much choice of extending it too much, and their balance among the different section is also very important. You are giving just 500 words to your result section and you are giving 2000 word your discussion section. So this is an unbalanced manuscript. So this will never be going to be accepted by the journal editor. So the word count balance is also very important, where you can contribute to the discussion section around 1500 to 2000 words you actually give to your results section, and 1000 words, 750 to 1000 words is the general length of your discussion section, where you have to cover all those things that we discussed in the previous slides. So there is very much important considerations while writing a discussion section. You have to cover a lot of things into your discussion section, but a flow should be maintained and it should not go unfocused and going beyond the word limit that is being acceptable by the journal editor and by your reader or your audience. So next is the selectivity cites favorable paper. So see, you have done a research by reading various previously conducted studies. So it would be good if you cite both the studies which are in your favor and which are going against your search results. It's not always that your study would be in line with previously conducted research. So you have to cite both kind of results which are not going in your favor and which are going in your favor. Because if few studies are going against your favor, then you have the opportunity to discuss why your search results are different from that has been previously conducted. So that is again a very focused thing, where audience or your reader would be interested in understanding that there are different kind of studies which have been conducted and there is dissimilarity or there is some newness in your study that is conducted. If the results you just cite only those studies, previously conducted research that is in line with your results, then nothing new is given by you to your audience, because they also know that these are the studies which have been previously conducted and such kind of results are expected. So you are not providing anything new to your audience. So don't selectively cite only those studies which are favorable or which are in line with your research. There is an opportunity to cite both kind of studies and tell your audience, see, I have done something different or I have observed something different and I can challenge what has been done previously through my results. You can also tell to your audience that my results are different because of this reason. So this is the best way how you can incorporate some studies which are different to yours. So don't selectively cite only the favorable papers into your discussion section. So failure to interpret results and place them in context. So this is one thing that has been seen in different kind of papers, where the author fails to actually interpret the result. This is the opportunity or this is the place in the manuscript where you can actually interpret your results for the very first time. Till this stage you have not interpreted your results in any place before the discussion section. So it is very important that you interpret your results and place them in a context by making a story out of it, connecting them that this is my objective and this is my result, and what I started with I finally reached to it. I decided to find the difference between drug A versus drug B, what is the difference in efficacy and safety. This was my objective. So, if I fail to write those results in a manner that I can't even show the efficacy of drug A versus drug B, nor even I am able to interpret the safety aspect of these two drugs, then what is the purpose of doing my research? Because there is none other section where I can actually differentiate between the two through my language. Till this stage I am just talking about the numbers, but as a layperson or as an audience I can't interpret those numbers if as an author I can't help you, right. So, this is an important stage where I can interpret those results and link to my objectives. Because if I conducted any study and within particular objective, then I should be able to answer my objective. If that these two things are not connected, then there is no purpose of actually doing a research. For an audience, for a third person, it means that I have not conducted the study in a proper way that I can actually answer my objectives. So, failure to interpret results and place them in context is another important point where I can connect myself with my audience, right. Because seeing your objectives in the abstract is one way where the audience was connected to me, seeing what has actually happened in the results section or in the discussion section, what I got. So, I have to be cautious while writing, while interpreting the results. See, what happens generally that people get confused as an author that what to write in interpretation of result, and they just write those numbers that has been discussed already in result section. In discussion section you actually don't use number, you put those numbers into your context of objectives. So, this is an important part where you can fail to link to your audience. So, the next is failure to reconcile opposing findings to other. So, this is connected to our point 2 where we were discussing about the selective sites favorable paper. Thank you.